My name is Emily McDonald, and I'm here today with Miss Marian Morse. Today's date is December 16th, 2009, and we are conducting an interview for my World War II class. All right. Where were you born?
I was born in a western New York State in a college town called Houghton, H-O-U-G-H-T-O-N. It's the place where my dad graduated, and I was born 3 months before he graduated.
What was your date of birth?
February 15th, 1925.
Where did you grow up?
Well, shortly after, I should say several years, my dad was interested in being a principal in a school, and a school opened up down on the Hudson River, just north of Haverstraw, called Tompkins Cove. Mm-hmm. There was a quarry there in that town, and he was principal of it was a small school, grades, first grade up through 12, and there were maybe, I don't know how many students in the school, but the classes were small, mm-hmm. like 20, 22 in that territory.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I did. I was the oldest, and I had a sister, Marilyn, who was born 15 months after I was born. She was born in May of the next year. And then I have a brother, Bob, who was born 7 years after that, mm-hmm. and a brother, Don, who was born 10 years after I was born.
What did your parents do? Your dad was a principal?
My dad was a principal, and my mother at that time was a homemaker. But my mother had gone to a school in Pittsburgh, or Carnegie Tech, and she had an interest in foods and things of that sort, but she didn't pursue that after she met my dad. But she was always in the church that we attended in Tompkins Cove. They were very active, and she did a lot of the organization, those kinds of things, and the food, and the this and the that, you know.
Yeah. What was it like to grow up during the Great Depression?
Well, I was rather young during the Great Depression, but I remember this particular incident. My dad, as principal of the school, got a phone call, and I used to like to sit in a spot right where the phone came in. It was one of these old-fashioned phones, you know, and I heard him say, "Oh, you can't lower all the other teachers' salaries and not lower mine," because they had apparently told him they weren't going to lower his salary. He said, "I'll take the same percentage lower," and that really gave me a lot of respect for my father, that he cared about his staff.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school, some of it in Tompkins Cove, and then that school closed or went to just a grade school, and my dad moved to Haverstraw, and I went to Haverstraw to high school. But then I came back to Stony Point, and I graduated from Stony Point, which was between Tompkins Cove and Haverstraw, in a class of 9, and I was the valedictorian. Wasn't that exciting?
Where did you go to college?
I went to Houghton College because my parents kind of insisted that I go to Houghton College. I loved it. I had a great time there.
Why did they insist that you go there?
Because they graduated from there. It was a Wesleyan Methodist college, and they wanted me to be in a college with that taught faith.
What did you think about, like, when Hitler came to power?
Well, I really wasn't as aware of some of the horror that was going on, and it truly was horror. But I was just annoyed with him, I guess would be a good way to put it, angry, you know. And my sister went into the cadet corps for nurses cadet corps, and she went to New England Baptist Hospital, and she had a neat uniform, and I wanted to leave school because I was in college now from 42 to 46, and I wanted to leave like after my second year or thereabouts and go into the waves. But my mother said, you finish college first, then you can do whatever you want. Well, of course, by the time I finished college, the war was over.
Aww.
But that's all right. I didn't,
What's the waves?
It's the Navy version of the WACS, the Women's Army Corps. It was the, I don't know why it's called waves, but that's what it was called.
Where were you on December 7th, 1941?
When the war started.
Pearl Harbor.
I was singing in the choir of the Methodist Church in Tompkins Cove. My dad was sitting in the back seat with my littlest brother with this in his arms. He used to hold me that because Don was an active one. We had doors coming into the church proper that sort of, they were double doors. That, well, I saw one of the double doors open, and I saw someone tap my father on the shoulder. And I thought, that's strange. And when it was appropriate, my father stood up and said, I think you should, to the pastor, I don't know that he said I think, but he said, I just received word that our forces have been bombed at Pearl Harbor. And that's how I learned about Pearl Harbor. It was quite, we were all just shocked.
Did you ever want, or what was it like to live here during the war? Like not be enlisted in anything, but to be here on like the home front?
On the home front, well, I was in college all those years, so we had no men at the college. They had all gone to war. So one of the nice things that happened is that a group of us women who were there became very close, and we stayed close as a group for years afterward. So that phase was there, and being out in western New York State, we didn't have news like we have today, and it would be a little while before we get the news. But I was aware of the war because we had no men on campus, and we knew they were all off fighting, and we were all concerned, and we'd get word now and then of someone's death, and that was always tough.
Did you work at all during the war, or were you just in college? You didn't have a job?
I worked as a waitress in the dining room at the college to help pay my expenses, and I had a good time doing that. That was fun. I carried these big trays.
Do you remember when the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan?
Yes, I do remember that.
And how did you feel about it?
I was pretty devastated that we did that, and we lost, and so many people were lost. But I could understand it as I thought about it, and as we all discussed it, and realized that we had to do what we had to do in order to get things.
How did you feel about FDR, Franklin Roosevelt?
Well, interestingly, I thought he was a very competent man, and I think he was a very caring man. And interestingly enough, in my later years, I became a guidance counselor in Hyde Park, and at the school system there. So I lived in the area where he was, and I met him a time once in a while. And his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, spoke at one of our graduations, and she was very eloquent, and she stayed for the entire program to watch everyone get their diploma, And I thought that was just was typical of her thoughtfulness. I thought he really cared about the country and about us getting through the problems we were in, during that time, and so I had respect for him.
How did you feel about when you heard he died?
Well, he had not been well. He'd had a lot of difficulties with his infantile paralysis, etc. And I felt that he, hopefully, and I felt, he should feel good about what he's done. And I know in Hyde Park we were all concerned about the family, but they all took it well, and they all realized that he had done what he did, and he did it well.
Where were you when you heard about VE Day?
VE Day is when the war was over?
Yes.
Let me see, where was I? You know, I don't remember where I was.
How did you feel about it?
Oh, I was glad when the war was, I was very, very glad that we were no longer fighting and things going on and on as they were. Interestingly enough, in my later years, I married my husband Bob Morse, and he had been in D-Day 10, so he went up the Normandy banks right after he finished his college at Hobart, and he went as far as San Lo, which is along the northern shore, and there was one of our own tanks that went up over a hedgerow, and there was another man running with him, and they threw their guns down, and the tank went up over the hedgerow, and it just smashed the guns to smithereens, which was what would have happened to him, except he said to the other guy, "Let's roll into the hedgerow." So the tank went over top of them, I mean high up, of course, and then because they had no guns, then the guns got smashed. They headed back but they were injured. They headed back to the lines, and he was in the hospital in England for a year. So.
Did you know your husband when he was in the war?
No, I didn't. No. Oh no, I didn't know him for quite a few years afterwards. But his telling me these stories, and we went back to visit, so that and they all came back to him, and he had been entertained by like they do take veterans or people that are in hospital and stuff with him, by a very lovely older woman in a beautiful home called the Abbey, and we went to visit her and the home, which was lovely.
What was it like to visit that?
Oh, he was so excited to see her again, and that made me excited to meet her for the first time, and to just see the territory, and have him tell me some of the things that had gone on. It was a moving experience.
Although it was wartime, do you have any fond, happy, or pleasant memories from this period?
I do, because of the good women friends I made at college, because I told you I was in college through those years, and we became so much closer than we would have had we had the men been there, because we all would have been interested in getting to know some of the men. And this way we were devoted to each other, in the sense of keeping up our spirits and keeping in touch with things.
What do you want students to know about World War II and its generation?
That's a good question. That it was a war brought on by a man named Hitler, who was not concerned with anything except his own interests and his own desire for power, and taking over his part of the world. And that I would hope that we would see that this kind of approach, and we do see it in some cases still in the world, that hopefully that'll get less, and I believe it has gotten less and less a part of nations drive and to use war as mode, I guess you'd say.
All right, I don't have any more questions left, but is there anything else you think that you'd like to share just to end the interview, or do you think you've shared everything, kind of?
Well, I think I've sort of shared pretty much. Do you feel that you got a sense of my life at that time? Yes, it was a very definitive time in our history, and I think we all rather felt that we were experiencing history very much so.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
And you've been very, very thoughtful. Your way of asking questions are very helpful.
Thank you.
So, yeah.